Welcome to Lab Results. We are live Wednesday, October 13th, already into October. Wow. But we are going to have a great conversation tonight. I have one of my fellow board members on tonight as our guest to help talk about what we discussed this past Monday. Just so you can have some background on Lab Results. Lab Results is a byproduct of the live Black Man Lab that we do every week here in Atlanta at the Andrew and Walter Young YMCA. We gather brothers from ages 5 to 85. It's an intergenerational conversation that we have every week to discuss everything from professional development to personal development. All those things are going to make us be better as men for our community and to lead. So tonight we will have a conversation around building your self-confidence as well as self-affirmation. That's what we talked about this past Monday, and we're going to delve into that conversation a little deeper with one of our panelists from Monday, which I'll get to secondly here. But before we do that, every week we do the same thing. We make sure we call on those that came before us, those shoulders that we stand on to do the work that we are doing currently. And we just want to make sure that their spirit is in this space, those folks that will be very happy about the work that we are doing. So all we do here on Lab Results is a very simple libation. What we do is we just simply call out one name that's going to carry us through this 1 hour tonight. So I'm gonna go ahead and call a name, and at the same time, I'm gonna ask our guest to do the same thing, and then we'll just say Ashe at the end of that. So, brother, if you will, with me, on three, 1, 2, 3. Sylvester Williams.
Alana.
Ashe.
Asheo.
Asheo. So yes, we just want to make sure we do a very condensed version of it here on Lab Results because we have such little time. But we want to make sure that we're always calling on those that came before us. So without further ado, I want to bring on our guest. I want to give a little introduction of him, but then I'll let him tell more of his story as well. So this is brother Jarrod Grant, who is with me tonight. He is again one of my brothers on the board of Black Man Lab. Has been very significant in us doing this work. And is doing great things here in Atlanta and in the world of education. Brother Jarrod, come on.
What's going on, Marty? Good to be here. What's going on, Black Man Lab family? And so I'm just happy to be here. Of course, my background is, I grew up in Racine, Wisconsin. I went to Wilberforce undergrad. I went to Clark Atlanta University for graduate school. And I'm working on my dissertation now, and I'm a professor up at Clark Atlanta University. All of that in the areas of political science. And some of my focuses are on international relations, African politics, American government, and methodology. So those are the areas I'm interested in, as well as Pan-Africanism and the African diaspora. So I have two children. I have a 23-year-old who will be 24 at the end of the year. His name is Tariq. And I have a 13-year-old who will be 14 at the beginning of the year. And her name is Jada. So.
Awesome. And, we're very fortunate to have a brother who is scholarly and who is as versed in the world of political discourse as our brother Jarrod Grant. So I'm glad to have you here, brother. And let's get into the conversation a little bit. Just talk about, first of all, Monday we did a little differently than what we normally do. Right? We actually went back to the original kind of a format of what Black Man Lab was, which was brothers gathering in a circle, fathers and sons in a circle. And we had started that way on Monday because not a whole bunch of people were in the room initially. But then next thing you know, we had a good problem. We had a great problem. We had a large contingent, a really, really big circle. but it led to some good conversation. It was a little different, like I said, than what we would normally do. So give me your feedback on what you thought about that.
Well, first of all, I love the problem that we just addressed. The room just continued to get bigger and bigger. The circle continued to get bigger and bigger, almost to the point where the circle was, we might have had to make a second circle, and trying to maintain the consistency. Number two, I like we always have a good intergenerational group, as well as a mixed group of brothers, with various and different backgrounds. We have brothers who just came out of incarceration. We have brothers who are attorneys, are professionals in corporate like yourself, to young people, asking and looking forward to some critical questions and answers to those questions. I thought it was powerful. We had a powerful therapist in there, original. And two quotes from him. He dropped the mic on. One was, "It should be expensive to be who you are." So he dropped the mic on that little quote. It should be expensive to be who you are. So that's one thing. And I think that expense or that value is all that you put into yourself, in order to construct yourself and create yourself. That's a lifetime of work and achievement. We're always trying to better ourselves from day to day.
Right.
The second quote he said, which I thought were two of the most powerful moments in that meeting. And the funny thing, it was at the end, so it was really needed, because so much was said, so much good had been said, and he gave a great exclamation point at the end. He said also, there are things days don't teach you as much as what years teach you. So he let us know that sometimes, looking on our experience over the years has given us a great deal of wisdom. Years also help us to heal whatever traumas or experiences that we've had that we needed to overcome. And it gives us more depth perception. And of course, and I like that dichotomy that he had between days and years. So I thought that was a powerful moment in there. And one or two of the questions from the brothers I thought were critical as well. But I'm sure we'll get into that as well.
Yeah, I as it relates to Brother Original and those mic drops, if you will, I had conversations with some of the young folks afterwards, and even after the day after, so like yesterday, and they all pointed to that, pointed to his mic drops, and that what you would learn in years versus a day, that resonated with some folks. And then it led us to having a conversation of the essentialness of being able to listen, right? And they said that, not me, in terms of you can shorten that period, right, of what took us years to learn. If you were younger and you were listening closely to some of the things that folks that came before you may have told you, you might not have had to take so long to learn what you learned, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I felt like that was significant and powerful, in that the kids, and I use the terms kids loosely, the young men seem to get that.
Right.
And I appreciated it in the space of Black Man Lab, and that that's our goal ultimately, is to have that where some of the stuff that's being said resonates enough that somebody wants to carry it with them to change what their thinking is.
Right.
So, as far as the affirmation piece, what do you think is, let me put this in two parts. What do you think was the most significant thing that the folks may have heard there in relation to starting to affirm themselves, and then also being able to internalize the self-confidence side of it? What do you think about that?
Ask that one more time. I'm trying to.
So what do you think was most significant? I'll just do it in the first part. What do you think is most significant in them being able to get information that they may have heard Monday to affirm themselves, help to affirm themselves, particularly the younger folks?
I think one of the critical things that we do with Black Man Lab every week, and the thing that we always ask the question of the panel, and that is, what are your habits? And we ask panelists that each week because those habits we know are critical to the success of each person, as well as it provides what the meeting was about, our own self-actualization, our own self-esteem. And so Maoli talked about affirmation, and each of us should have something that we're affirming to ourselves each and every day. What is that message that we may say out loud, as well as what is that message that we may say internally to ourselves all day? It's like a chant. We're programming ourselves for our success. So I thought that was very powerful. So that's a habit. We also had some other habits. One of the brothers just said simply, get up every day. But it's get up with intention. That when you wake up, get up with the intention of getting up and getting to work. And what was that work? Another brother would say, start working on yourself for at least 45 minutes. You know, whatever that is, from meditation, the workout, the running, the walking, whatever it is, you should begin to self-care for that first 45 minutes. So these habits, I think, is what was so critical. And I think that was the messaging that we were really giving. These things help to improve ourselves and help us in our own self-care. Do you have, and I always said this, do you have 45 minutes to give to yourself every day? Just 45 minutes to an hour. Can you do that? Get up at that 5 o'clock, 5:30, or whatever time you've set for yourself. He asked another critical question. How many of you in here get up just in time to get yourself ready and get out the door? And, you know, we had about a third of the group with their hands up. And so we know that's a problem. And so that's why the awareness of the self-care came into play. So it's important that we give ourselves time to work on ourselves, our mind, body, and spirit. I talked about, you know, meditation and libation, you know, that we get up and have, speak with creation, you know, speak with the ancestors, meditate, sit for just a few minutes and just be quiet, you know, and allow the world and your thoughts to kind of become one. It also spoke to reading, you know, get up and read also for a little bit, you know. Another piece was, I always said this, you know, don't look at your phone. Just get up and begin self-care, you know. So these are just a few of the things, but I think that the brotherhood and the young people really understood, because we gave them some practical habits that they can begin to integrate into their daily life. And these daily habits, we know, can construct the type of man that they want to become and need to become. And again, it's from the experience of experienced brothers, you know. So we know that it works.
Yeah, and you know, one of the questions that was asked was, What about, well, let me rewind. So let's start this with you. I know you pretty well. I know that you're a strong brother. You carry yourself well, as do all of our members, all the board members. Where do you think in your world, where do you think that started? Where did you think that your self-confidence, and when I say self-confidence, I don't mean cockiness or anything like that. I just mean feeling confident about yourself and you being able to affirm yourself. Where do you think that started? What put you on the road to being in that mindset? And when do you think it happened?
That self-confidence, I think, is it builds up over a lifetime. And the more that you do something and the more that you begin to do that well, is that experience that builds that confidence. I grew up in a community, bro. Mm-hmm. And I mean a community. And you don't realize what you have until you don't have it anymore. Sure. And so, and I know that you did too. We grew up in communities where people cared about us. You will get in trouble if you were doing something wrong and an adult saw you doing it. Mm-hmm. It's going to get back to your parents. I didn't get a lot of spankings. I was kind of a good child. But I had a couple community spankings, and that was just off of the fact that a parent told on all of the kids that all of the kids were participating in something they weren't supposed to do. And right. So just because I'm a part of all the kids, even though I didn't do what was done, I still got in trouble. And right. So it was community trouble, so to speak. My only point is it's the reinforcement of adults paying attention to us for good and for correcting the bad. And so I grew up next to a park and a community center, and therefore I was involved in sports. And sports is truly character building. It builds your character, helps you to build your physicality, and helps you build your self-esteem, and it helps build your confidence. You're always being criticized. Where I'm from, if you airball and, you're in the game, everybody's laughing at you. Right. So what's your response? You can't buckle and cry because they're going to get laughed at even harder. You have to come back and improve so so that your shot needs to be where it is. Otherwise, people are going to remember what occurred. I was in the game. I remember at 16, my best friend came down. We were playing one of the Chicago community centers, sponsored by Wendy's. You always had this team called Wendy's, and from some community center, I don't know where it was. We always played them. They always came to Racine, and we always went up there. And my best friend, he comes down the court doing his Magic Johnson, Tragic Johnson imitation, thinking he's gonna finger roll and do something. Brother came off the rim so perfect. I jumped high. I could look into the rim, and I reared back, hit the rim, came all the way back, and landed on my back. When I tell you, the entire gym and the whole community laughed for about 10 minutes before we could resume the game. And so my point of that story, of course, is that the fact that we had so much community, the fact that I could make a huge mistake, but I had to come back from that mistake in order to continue to better myself. And so you're always being reinforced, I think, for the better when you have community. And so we had other kids to play with. I know you grew up with Maoli and other kids. But we had a community of peers that we would learn from, good, bad, or indifferent, foolish or whatnot. We learned from that. And I think that's a critical piece that's missing from the experience of many of our children today, Generation Z and the millennials. has spent too much time inside and not with their community. And so I think that's one of the critical points right there.
Yeah, and that gets to my next point. Actually, you transitioned that very well. One of the things that was mentioned on Monday was, what if a young man doesn't have a point of reference? We have a point of reference, right? We had community, we had, our own families that built us up, hopefully, and even in us having our failings, we had to get up and dust ourselves off because that was the expectation of the community and your family. Whereas, what if there's a young man that doesn't have that? What do we see as a means of creating that biosphere?
Well, Black Man Lab, brother, we pay it back because we know something was missing. But even when we were growing up, we knew something still was missing. Mm-hmm. I was impacted by other men at different times. And so I did okay in school, but it was in 10th grade where this brother comes from Morehouse. At one of these programs, my mother was a community leader, an educator. And so she always was putting together programs. And so I'm at one of these programs, and this brother, who's a lot like us, professional, strong, and I hadn't seen that before. And he impacted me, his intelligence. He just seemed like the full package. And I knew that's who I want to be. Not necessarily with the field that he was in, but the image that he possessed. I wanted to be that. And so, and I want to be that, and to try to be that for others. We have done that as community because we know that was what was missing. So for the group today, we're trying to fill in that gap. Mm-hmm. And so being in the Black Man Lab is exactly the type of work of what we're doing is what is fulfilling that. We are an organization of men and members. Many of us are older men speaking to younger men and boys and youth. We're speaking to them from our experience to give them the gems that they need in order to be successful. Because we know that there's something missing, whether it's a father, whether it's an uncle, whether it's a multitude of peers that we had, or community that we had. So we are a part of their community, and we're letting them know we're a part of their community. And we've taken it steps further. Like we're gonna put Black men in front of you that are millionaires and help you to make those steps. Black men who are attorneys, who are doctors, who are professors, who are corporate men, who are you name it, healers. Yep. We're putting them in front of them, who are socially conscious, who are historically conscious. We're putting all of this in front of them so that they can take all of that information, and even though they may not utilize it today, it's something that's going to ring true for them as Brother Original talked about, as they live their years. They're going to have something to play back in their mind to say, you know what, I've been given a gem. I've been given a nugget of wisdom about this. This is the route that I'm going to go. Or I know somebody in this. I just need to call these brothers and see if I can link up with such and such. Because I was on the search. My mother divorced my father, and I wasn't in touch with him from 5 years old to 26 years old. And so you become a boy always in the search of father figures, but I had a huge family, uncles and all of that who filled in some of those gaps, but you're still on the search. And you're looking for answers. And I was looking for answers in who we are as people and history and just other answers. I was always looking. And so,
Yeah, I think that, first and foremost, absolutely, Black Man Lab um, is unique, I think, in that we're trying to grab everybody, right? And when I say everybody, I'm talking about from an intergenerational standpoint, because there's a lot of wisdom to be drawn both ways, right? So, we like for instance, we had the gentleman that had been recently incarcerated in our space on Monday. Those guys got something to give, but at the same time, the space has something to give them as well, right? And that's going to build their um, level of confidence coming back into a world that they've been out of, obviously, for a period of time, in terms of getting some information that maybe they've missed out on, but them also being able to share their experiences from a place of learning what not to do, maybe, and then likewise learning what to do, because you could very well, some of those brothers may have got some education while they were incarcerated, whatever. So I think that that's key, in that we have to have the spaces of a Black Man Lab. Obviously, that's key. The challenge is touching and reaching out as much as we possibly can, and I think one of the things that you touched on there that I want to get to help with, I think is significant in helping that level of confidence for our young folks, and then being able to affirm themselves, is that historical consciousness that you talked about. Mm-hmm. Talk about that a little bit, and as it relates to where we can find some affirmation.
Yeah. One more point before I get into the historical piece. I talked about community, but the other thing that we're doing with Black Man Lab, as we're taking and shaping our part in community as an organization, but we're also building an institution. So a part of our role is institution building, sustaining, and continuity. So I just wanted to throw that last piece in there.
Absolutely.
But historical consciousness, man, we were on the search and didn't even know, at least for me, of who am I? Mm. What is my purpose? And so, I wanted to, I asked these questions. I took an interest in history just naturally. I always did well in history, whether it's college prep or AP courses. It was that subject and English language arts, I always did pretty good. So no, that's probably why I'm in social science and not in the hard sciences like, engineering and math or anything like that. And so, but no matter what the history was, I was interested. But when I got at Wilberforce, and I was in this class, African History Before 1865. And this professor by the name of Dr. Marvin Hare. Dr. Hare imparted such depth of knowledge of something I didn't even know was missing. I was asking a question, but I still wasn't asking the right question because I didn't have the words to ask the question about who am I? Mm-hmm. Not who am I just as an individual, but as the collective me. Who are we? Mm-hmm. And so that class began to put me on that journey to understand, and there's a book that brought me into historical consciousness, and that is How Europe Underdeveloped Africa by Dr. Walter Rodney. I began to know that I was a child of Africa, that I'm a son of Africa, and I'm a son of not slaves, mm-hmm. per se, but mm-hmm. I'm a son of a person who built and was a part of building some of the greatest civilizations ever known to man, and that there was a disruption in our collective development. And I understood how we got to where we were. And I began to understand that, and then that opened up that opened me up to a whole new consciousness. And you could just say I had a paradigm shift in my life. I know you had it. I know Mauli had it. I know Fred had it. Every member in our board has had a paradigm shift, an awakening of sorts. And again,
Absolutely.
all we wanted to do is fulfill. We come together as brothers just from the community, but also because we'll do this work for nothing, because we want to do this work and fulfill something that we know was missing in our lives as we were growing up. So we want our kids and our community of kids and youth to have that consciousness fulfilled so that they speak the native language of knowing our historical knowledge and history. And so that they're automatically conscious, with it. And that's a different type of being. And we see that in our kids, that they float a little differently than we did.
Right.
And that's because, we were in the search, but we helped fulfill that for them in many ways. And now the world is their oyster on what they want to go and get and achieve, because they don't have some of the same deficits of consciousness that we may have had. They have the confidence of knowing their native tongue, their culture and language and their historical consciousness. And we're looking to help push that institutionally even further for them. So,
yeah, and I think that while they have, the advantage, let's say, of us as it relates to our children, that have a level of consciousness and a level of awakening, as you put it before, having that hands-on with them, there's also the outside influences of different cultures that consistently affect their thinking and how they operate. And also those other cultures work hard to shield and or diminish what we know is that, you were talking about the text that kind of brought you through. And for me, it was Chancellor Williams' Destruction of Black Civilization. Yes, same kind of lines, right? Where you look through there and you start looking at history and the realization, like when I really delved into that, both as a text as well as just a book for myself. It was a text at Howard, but then it was also just a book that became of high interest to me. When you start to delve into it, it really opens you up to say, we've been great, and that changes the paradigm. That's that paradigm shift you're talking about, right? That's right. Where you like, what I've been fed isn't my food, right? So where we have this challenge right now is getting our young folks to that, because so much of society wants to say right now, well, we're moving on from that. You know what I mean? Like we see that right now. We see where people want to sometimes ignore what is today's oppression, right? They just want to say, we got to move on for that, or that person wasn't being racist, or this wasn't an oppressive thing. This was just a thing. Mm-hmm. No, it was purposeful, right? Because that's been history. That's what the history has shown us. History doesn't lie to us. So our challenge right now, and I'm saying all this to get to, is if you could point to a way that we could raise that level of consciousness, because I think that level of consciousness is where the self-affirmation and confidence starts, right? What do you think that is a move for us to do that? What, for those that are on the outskirts, again, those that are our kids have a bit of an advantage, but there's still pushback. That's why the Black Man Lab came about. There's still that pushback. but at least that you know that sometimes that they're listening, right? And they hear stuff versus somebody that's never actually getting the words coming through their ears.
You know, I'm gonna keep pushing our mission in Black Man Lab because that's why we built this institution from which we came. I just told you about the Morehouse brother that inspired me in 10th grade. I told you about my professor, my second semester freshman year, that changed my entire paradigm shift, you know, as a result of him. When I came to Clark in 91, second semester, 92, in the winter semester, Dr. John Henry Clark comes on campus. And I go to his lecture, and I had my third paradigm shift. And I went from a young man who still had some hoop dreams, playing pro basketball, even had the choice of going overseas. But I was impacted so much by Dr. Clark that he put me on the path to scholarship. So what's my point to all of that?
Mm-hmm.
My point is, and what my only cause is touches. Black men affirmed me. They helped to reinforce what my purpose and my trajectory should be. I saw images, I saw knowledge, I saw wisdom in such a way that it impacted, they touched me, you know, in a way that impacted my trajectory. So that's the same thing we do in Black Man Lab. We're trying to give those positive touches to young people and make it contagious that other Black men are doing the same thing to each other as our peers, but also to our young people, that they're reinforcing the same type of things that we know need to occur. We're reinforcing historical consciousness. We're reinforcing work ethic. We're reinforcing family. We're reinforcing all of the positive things that we know that are significant and important for us to move forward, you know? And so it's these positive touches, this reinforcement that we need in order for us to move forward.
Yeah, and here's something quite simple too. Is simply seeing themselves in us, right, in a different way. Simply seeing themselves as, oh, I could possibly be him, whoever that is, you know, whether that's me, you, whoever we have on the panel. Simply just being able to say it's possible, right, versus what they've been told and what they see on a daily basis. And I get excited talking about it because, you know, in our short period of time of having Black Man Lab, you see some significant changes, not just in what people are doing, but their personality, right? The other piece of it is what we need ultimately is for our young brothers to become community leaders in some form or fashion. That doesn't have to be them being a you know, a civil rights activist. It doesn't have to be them, you know, being in politics. It can be in whatever it is, but being a leader in what they do, because that's going to be the key to creating the glue. That's the difference. That's, now that I say that, let me rewind that. When we talked about community and you know, that village piece that we grew up on, it was glue, right? It was, you couldn't get away with doing something in your neighborhood that, you know, if your boy's mama saw it, or you know, somebody saw it, they're going to talk to your, or vice versa, father, whatever, going to talk to your family. Well, that's disconnected now. And I quite honestly, I think that that's purposeful. It's been done purposeful in our communities for that disconnect and that fissure to be there in our communities. And that which leads to why we have to have this conversation about self-confidence
right.
and affirmation, right?
Right.
So anyway, I want to touch it one more time back on Monday. We were dealing with our circle conversation, and young folks came up with some good questions, and wanted to see what you thought was significant within that. Was there anything that jumped out at you that you heard from our young folks?
Well, what I keep hearing, I keep seeing questions in our young people. And as we have to be purposely engaging with them. I see questions in a positive way, because I think that we're kind of become muses and inspiration to make them start thinking. So I keep on seeing the wheels turn. And so I see these wheels turning, and so ideas and thoughts that they didn't have before. Similar to what I was saying my experience was. I didn't know what I didn't know.
Yep.
And I didn't even know to ask the question about it. And I think that's what I see in them. So when I'm engaging them and I see all of us engaging them, I think that we're doing that for them. I know sometimes we also listen to them, but it's important to also fill in the gaps that they're just not capable of filling. And so we have to impart to them some information and knowledge and wisdom in a way that they just haven't heard about, and we do that. When we've talked about the sports industry, we talked about it as an industry.
Right.
We didn't just talk about the athletes. That's we talked about those who were in the pros, but then what are they doing after the pro?
Right.
Or those who got hurt and were supposed to go. Those who became, we had one brother, I think you grew up with him as well, who played pro. And then he became, what is my life after this? Well, he became a motivational speaker. And he took all of the anecdotal things that he did in sports and said, let's apply this to life.
Yeah.
And and that's what you do. Yeah. And that's what we do. So I think we are answering questions that they don't even know to ask. Yeah. We're filling in gaps, for them. As well as the things that they ask, we have answers for them. We're the solution. We're our own solution. And we're just speaking to our inner children when we're speaking to our young people, our inner child.
Yeah. And that's been, I think that's been the challenge we've had. When I say we, I'm talking about your middle-aged Black men. The challenge has been, we find these levels of success in life, and then we stay in our own little silo to deal with your family and, whatever your day-to-day is, that's what you're doing, versus sharing the information, right? And, other communities do that. They share the information. We haven't had, since there's been this kind of fissure in our communities, we haven't had where there's this consistent push down of information on things in life, whether it's professional development or self-development. It just hasn't been there. Now, it may happen within your family, but the collective piece we haven't had, and that's what this space is providing. Right. And I think it's funny because I was having a conversation with someone today. They were asking me potential money for us, by the way, but they were asking about what we do and what the Black Man Lab is all about. And as I was explaining all of what we do and talking about it, I ultimately got to the feeling of what Black Man Lab is what makes it roll. That's what makes the difference of, we can talk about all of our activities and all that, but you really, until you're in that room, you have no idea the power of it, right? And that's what I think, if we can continue that, which we will on our end. And when I say we, I mean we as a people outside of Black Men Lab. There's other organizations out there. I think what we may be somewhat unique is where we're grounded in our history, and being civil-minded in our activities as well. So I think that's one of the things that's a little different than a lot of organizations. I'm sure there's others out there that do it.
Right. That's right.
Anyway, we're pushing the clock, so but I don't want to let up on this, man. You got some good gems to drop, brother. So let's talk about some of those tools that we talked about on Monday that our young folks or people in general, not just young folks, can look at to help build their self-confidence and affirming themselves. So we talked about, obviously, our habits, rituals, and disciplines. What did you hear? Did you hear anything new to you on Monday? Or what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I didn't hear anything new because, it's such a part of us now. But I think for our young people, mm-hmm. they heard some new things and mm-hmm. they heard some reinforcing things. Remember, part of why the Black Man Lab started is because we wanted to impart to our sons the messaging that we are telling them, that I needed another brother like you to tell my son that same thing. Mm-hmm. And I know you're going to do it without me prompting you to do it. You're going to give him the same positive messaging. I'm going to do it for all of your sons. Mm-hmm. Because it's hard to be a prophet at home, at the crib. They don't
say that again, brother.
You're not a prophet. They seen you in your underwear, and they seen you fall down the steps. So right. You're not a perfect being, and so sometimes they feel you're oppressing them to a certain extent. So they need to hear it from somebody else. And when they do, then it becomes more believable to a certain extent. Mm-hmm. And so then that reinforcement does something to solidify their trajectory, their understanding that it will be the social construct that we need to socialize them in a particular way. Because that's what we're doing. We're mm-hmm. following a socialization process. So those habits that we keep on pushing. Listen, son, get up. Give self-care to yourself. What is your affirmation right now? How are you building your best self physically, mentally, spiritually? Chant. Give praise to the ancestors. Give praise to creation or the creator in whatever form that you have created or that came from your family. Give all of that the first thing you should do when you wake up in the morning. And then follow your day, but be disciplined about it. Because we played sports, we understand discipline. We understand what it takes because we're going to get knocked down in sports, but we don't stay down. It's automatic for us to get back up.
Yeah.
We know in this generation, they need more affirmation because they haven't been told to get up and hustle. Mm-hmm. So that's not a part of them. So we are reminding and reinforcing into them to do that, but we're also giving them some of the most critical things that an individual should be doing. And I'm pushing this, Marty, and that's those habits. and those rituals as Black men that we have to do every day.
Yep.
Read. We told them to read. Read something every day. Read articles. I try to read a couple hours a day, but I'm also listening to lectures and audio books every day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm listening to John Henry Clark or, you know, Ivan Van Sertima, Chancellor Williams, you know, Doc Ben. I'm listening to those old elders, as well as some of the new scholars and other folks who are just talking about significant and important topics of the day. But we also talk to them, like you said earlier, about self-development. I talk about the 10,000 hour rule, which I know that you're in, that you know all about. And that is, but I tell my students 10,000 times 5. And that is, you should be working on yourself in at least 5 different areas. 1, your career. 2, something in technology. You have to be very proficient in something in technology. 3, something in the arts. And see, that speaks to Black Man Lab and this initiative on We Need You. As well as you need to be doing something physical every day. What is that? And you need a proficiency in that physicality. And of course, last is, but not last, is your spirituality. You need to be doing something spiritual. Those 5 things are critical to you disciplining yourself on a daily basis and adding value to your life in a multitude of ways. But you're doing that with discipline, habits, and the rituals of the self-care and construction of you. We walked into the Kemetic schools, and it said, know thyself, know yourself. And so a part of knowing yourself is, what does it take you to move or not move? And you need to know that about yourself so that you can move yourself, and so that you can move your family, your community, build institutions, and leave a legacy for others to follow suit as well.
Mm-hmm. And that legacy falls into, sometimes it's just like I look at me, you know, my dad is 86 years old. And as I've gotten older, I can see some of his characteristics as a man that are in me now, just innate. And that in itself is legacy. You know, it's not, I think a lot of times people think about legacy as something in terms of physical, you know, or material or something like that. But the real legacy is what somebody puts in you, right? And you have to carry, that's going to be good, not just for you and your family, but also good for, you know, the rest of the world, if you will. That's, you know, right. So I think that everything you just said there is super important, man. I'm so excited for us right now, because to me it's clear what we need to do, and in terms of, as Maoli talks about all the time, getting the touches, but also making sure that our folks are grounded in what our history is. And I don't mean that they have to become historians like you. You know, you can sprout off all kind of stuff right off the top of your head from a historical standpoint.
But we have to have a canon. You're right. There's a canon of information we all should be operating from.
Exactly.
There are books we all should read, no matter what.
And you know what? I'm glad you mentioned that, because that was going to be my next thing. I want to challenge you, and then anybody else that you can come up with. I had one of our attendees that comes to Black Man Lab all the time, one of our poppers, gave me a list of books, but I want to get specific on books that we should have.
Absolutely. We already have.
Okay. I need that.
We have the books, we have the movies, and we have the lectures.
Okay. Yeah. And we need to have. I want to form a library of that for us. Yeah. And not only that, some books that can ultimately become our own textbooks
Right.
for when we, continue to move forward. Because I think that that's part of us having that awakening. I know for me was, and I talked about, destruction of Black civilization. I had a really, it was odd. I took a year off of Howard because I lost my scholarship, and my mom and dad were like, "You going to a community college? You ain't going back." They gave it to me, and so I'm like, "I'll do whatever I got to do to get back there." Right, and so I wound up going to Olive Harvey Community College in Chicago, which wasn't far from where I lived. And there was it wasn't Black history, but something like that, a Black history course. A gentleman, professor by the name of Armstead Allen. This dude, when I tell you, he was connected to, he knew John Henry Clark. He had Ivan Van Sertima came and not preached, but lectured us. Ivan Van Sertima came to Olive Harvey, little community college. And it was transformative, right? Where I got information that I didn't have. And we need to do that. We need to be that for so many people, right? We were fortunate that we were in schools that, had that kind of a environment that you might come up on a John Henry Clark. You might come up on an Ivan Van Sertima. We have to be that conduit to the folks that come through Black Man Lab, and part of that is us having that library of information that we can let people lead with, man. Because I want to awake as many as we possibly can, because they're going to be, who knows how long we're here. We need them to be able to carry that torch. So
that's why we leave our institution as a legacy to this work.
Absolutely. Man, look, we're up against it, man. We got a couple minutes here before we wind out. You've already, I would say, talk about your habits, rituals, and disciplines that you've talked about them countless times. Anything that you want to leave our audience with tonight?
I think that we encourage you all to bring your young people to Black Man Lab. Everything we talked about today is really about the work that we do. We've done this work naturally as men, as brothers. We come together in brotherhood and friendship and easily do this work together in friendship and in brotherhood because these were the missing parts or gaps that we may have seen in our lives, or at least in our peers' lives as we were coming up. Mm-hmm. And so we wanted to make sure that we created some institution that cares for our community, that cares for our people, that cares for our young people, and so that we could cultivate and develop them. So we talked about self-esteem on Monday. And so self-esteem, one of the biggest things our community lost is our confidence in ourselves. And so we have to be the collective individuals in order to build back that confidence so that we can take back over the world for the better, bring our gift to humanity was humanity itself, and so that's what we're imparting in this brotherhood and in our community. We want to give those positive touches that reinforce historical consciousness, self-esteem, self-actualization, habits and rituals. We want to make sure that we're passing this through so that our young people take over the world in the most and in the best way, because the world needs us, and we need you. Bring your young people to us. We need you. Yeah, that's right. We need you. Bring your young people to us. And this is what we're talking about. And this is what we love. One thing, Marty, I kind of cheat a little bit because I have you brothers as a community. So it allows me to kind of rest a little bit sometimes and not have to do all the work. Because there were times back in the day that I was doing these things on my own and by myself.
Yeah.
And sometimes that can wear you out, you know. And so it's easy when you got a multitude of brothers with the same mindset, and that easily come together to do the work together, which makes it a lot more simple. So I appreciate your brotherhood. I appreciate Black Man Lab, and we want to share that, have that shared experience with others. So bring them to the Black Man Lab is really what I want.
Absolutely. We as Brother Grant said, we need you. And we need you so that the world will be a better place at the end of the day. We know that what we are as a people, that are people of this earth, are people that are built on love, community, innovation, and creation. It's what the world needs. We don't need constant takeover and usurpation of other people and that whole mindset. And that's what's failing the world right now. So with that, brother, I'm gonna let you close us out. How about that?
All right.
Just me and you.
Brother, I'm a link in this chain.
I'm a link in this chain.
And it won't break here.
And it won't break here.
I am a link in this chain.
I am a link in this chain.
And it won't break here.
And it won't break here.
And we are links in this chain.
We are links in this chain.
And it won't break here.
And it won't break here. Ashe.
Ashe. Ashe.
Appreciate you, brother. Thank you again, man. And see you on Monday.
All right, Black Man.
If I don't see you before. All right, bro. Love you, man.
You too, Black Man.
All right.
Every time we speak, I feel this melody telling me my black dreams are sacred. My black